we should be expecting 700 within 2 years. I'm coming to the end. In addition to this, a serious leadership commitment everywhere needed by politicians, government and public chiefs to deal with the untreated absence of management accountability in the public service. There's a saying in Australia about some politicians. They say that they are expert in delivering the sizzle and not the sausage. Be vigilant. Ask yourself when you're hearing announcements in the coming days about services. Is it sizzle or is it sausage? We are proud of some of the many changes in the new Ireland that we live in. But it is how we treat and care for our homeless and those who have great difficulty in securing timely access to healthcare. This too is the true measure of our maturity as a nation and a caring society. In the end, I say to you, do good and do well, because both are independent. And good luck with your work. Thank you.
All right, we only have one or two more speakers. I can ask Dan Connolly and Luke Daly and Linda Comfort to come side stage. And our next speaker is on behalf of the MEAI Advocates of Ireland. This is Joan Byrne. Let's have a big round of applause for Joan.
Thanks, Joan. I'm sure you're all dying to get home at this stage. My name is Joan Byrne and I'm a founder member of the MEAI Advocates Ireland. And we are here today fully supporting the Still Waiting campaign. I know that we all have sort of our own, kind of areas of interest, obviously, and we're all part of different campaigning groups. But I think all of us here understand that this is a complex issue, and what benefits us all benefits each one of us. And I'm really can't reinforce that enough, that there is unity and strength, and we are much stronger together. And I hope that today is a start. I would have liked to see a lot more people, but those who made the effort, well done. And if there is no mention of the implementation of Sláinte Care, no budget allocation next week, we should be back out here the following week and the week after, and however long it takes. Because this isn't just today. We need to build this movement. Today is a great start. And for those of you who might have been involved in the water charges movement, I don't know if I can say that without being arrested, but for those of you, you might remember the October water charge movement when there were absolute droves of people started converging onto O'Connell Street, a wonderful experience. But what a lot of people didn't realise was the meeting before that in the September, which I was at, there was about 100 people. And within 1 month, that had gone from that to what we saw in the October that year, so bear that in mind. I just want to very briefly tell you that a little bit about myalgic encephalomyelitis, hard to say, but even harder to live with. We're a patient community that has suffered immeasurably over decades and decades. It's a neurological illness, and it was classified by the World Health Organization as such in 1969. Now that's 50 years ago next year. So far in Ireland, the progress we've made is no GP training, no consultant, no clinic, no single specialist in the service. 50 years next year. There are people who have lived and died with ME, who have got no treatment, have fallen between all the cracks, and many, many severely ill people who are lying in their beds in darkened rooms, cannot bear light, noise sensitivity, can't eat or tube fed, and nobody hears about them. We have constantly been in touch with various politicians, with Simon Harris, who promised us a meeting in March, and we're still waiting on that. And we ask them over and over again, why haven't you got a specialist service? And they come back with the same stuff about, people it's a complex illness, and you go to this consultant for that and that consultant for that. The issue is nobody is coordinating that care. There is no single consultant taking responsibility for the ME patients, so they're either left to sink or swim or fall between the cracks. Mostly they fall between the cracks. So I just wanted to stress that we're not going away, the ME community is not going away, and I fell into this community 6 years ago. I had heard the illness, but I didn't know anything about it. I fell into it through a relative. My son actually got ME, and my God, it's been an eye-opener for me. I've met the most wonderful people, the sickest people, the strongest people, the most fabulous people, some of whom are here today. And I know the effort it's taken for you to get here today, so well done. I just wanted to finally say that we in ME Advocates Ireland are in regular contact with patients and families, many of whom are at their wits' end. And patients are literally on the verge, many of them have done, of taking their own lives. This is no joke. There's a very high suicide rate of patients with ME. And that is simply because they cannot bear the ignorance, the neglect and the abuse. It's one thing living with a chronic illness. I have a separate chronic illness. In fact, I have 3 of them. And I live with those and I'm under 3 different specialities, and that's fine. And I deal with those. But there's respect for that illness and understanding. But for people with ME, they're often dismissed or told it's all in their head, or take up their bed or walk, or you're lazy or whatever. And nothing could be further from the truth. And the science is out there to prove it, but the doctors are not being taught the current science. I won't delay. I know Sarah's looking at me with a knife in my back now saying, get off the stage. So one final thing I wanted to say, to those people maybe, who might hear this today, I know a lot of you obviously are in need the health service and have connections with it, but those of you who may not have a current need for the health service, or certainly in the same way people with a chronic or long-term illness might, just know this, that someday you will find yourself needing this service. You or your family member will find yourself needing this health service. And the worry that I have, and the worry that we in ME Advocates Ireland have, and I know the worry that all the campaigning groups have, if we don't have a proper functioning health service now, we will have nothing left for our children and for our grandchildren. And we can't allow this to happen. So really we don't have a choice, we have to fight this. And the final thing I want to say is a quote. I met a neurologist recently, and this will just tell you how bad the health service is. You know how long it takes to get an appointment with a consultant anyway, so let's put that aside. So you get to see the consultant, and this consultant ordered a range of tests for this individual. Great, thinks he should be doing fine, wonderful, whole series of tests. And then he said to me, he said, if we had a properly functioning health service, now he said this off the top of his head, I wasn't asking him anything. He said, I'd be saying to you, come back in 3 months' time and we'd have all of these tests and these results, and I'll review them, and then we'll look at a plan or a determination or a diagnosis or whatever. But he said, we don't. So he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an appointment for 2020, March 2020. And I can't guarantee that all those tests will be done and I'll have those results, but there's a better chance I'll have them in 18 months. I certainly won't have them before that. So not only do you wait years to get in and see a consultant, then you wait further more years to get the tests and to go back for the review. And I know that other people have gone to a consultant and the consultant decided, well really that's not my speciality, waiting 3 and 4 years to get there, and then get referred to another consultant and wait 3 and 4 years more to get there. So it's not just that one way. People with chronic illnesses are being pushed further and further away. So look, I won't say any more. You know how bad it is. I'm preaching to the converted. But just stay with us. If Cyril Stillwaite Campaign organises another march, and he will, I'm sure, I'll certainly be there, and I hope to see you all there as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Joan, well spoken. I'm just going to call Dan Conley last time to come side stage if you're here, Dan. Okay, our next speaker is a very important speaker as well. Had a very fabulous campaign there a few months ago, and also around healthcare. So can I please welcome Luke Daly to come speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Luke, and I'm speaking as Vice President of IT Blanchardstown Students' Union, and as a rep for the This Is Me Trans and Non-Binary Healthcare Campaign, as unfortunately the founder, Noah Halpin, could not be here today, but he does send his regards and his solidarity. The campaign was born not out of anger, but desperation. Desperation because my friend Noah had nowhere to turn. Desperation because my friend Noah was continuously told that he needed to be diagnosed as mentally ill. Desperation because the health system let him and thousands of others around this country down. The campaign was born out of sheer desperation for somebody to listen to the trans and non-binary community, who are still often subject to cruel and barbaric forms of what they consider as assessment on a daily basis. But we're all gathered here today because of similar reasons. Those reasons multiply into millions when we take into account trans healthcare, waiting lists, mental health, underfunding, and skimming the top of the budget so that the ministers can enjoy their private escort to avoid facing the music, while the rest of us have to dance to whatever tune has been spat out by the HSE. I'd like to talk today briefly about vulnerability, a state or condition that leaves somebody dependent on another entity for support in some sort of capacity. Why is it that the vulnerable have to rely on a government that fails us every day? Why is it that the vulnerable are left waiting with mounting debt while the powerful go unquestioned for their negligence? Why is it that the vulnerable are left to rot and die without even so much as a sorry or an apology from our government? Why are the vulnerable left to be so goddamn vulnerable? For the past year, the This Is Me campaign has been in and out of Leinster House demanding for better healthcare for trans and non-binary people. We were told get evidence because they claim to be practicing the best standard of care. We sent in an investigative journalist to interview the people who have compared the actual best standard of care to American gun laws. How is it acceptable to have the patients running the asylum here? I stand before you today to commend your courage and waiting because you've shown you're no longer vulnerable. You're empowered, you're angry, you're brave, and you're very powerful. No longer will we stand for painful waiting lists. No longer will we stand for people to be left die on trolleys. No longer will we allow waiting lists of minimum of 2 years or longer for life-saving treatments. No longer will we wait for Simon Harris to respond because we demand a response now. I stand before you today to remind you all that there is a general election coming up. Remember the government who brought this pain. Remember the promises that have been constantly broken. Remember the Taoiseach who took almost €50 million away from mental health funding. Remember the government that would rather prioritise a constitutional clean-up rather than cleaning up their own acts and the sheer mess that is the HSE, that needs nothing short of a complete overhaul. Remember, the time is ticking and your vote is your voice. I'm reminded of an old Irish statement. You'll never miss the water until the well dries. Well, let me tell you today that the healthcare system in this country has well and truly been barren for a long time now, and the government in power is currently facing an unmerciful drought. The only thing I recognise here today is an ocean of rage, an ocean of anger, and a thirst for justice for those who we've lost to the negligence of our healthcare sector. Today, we'll take a moment of silence, if you wouldn't mind, to remember those who we've lost because this is no longer good enough. Take a moment of silence to think of those who are currently lying in a hospital trolley with uncertainty of their future, wishing they could join us today. We'll take a moment of silence to reflect on those who took their own life before they were left to rot in the hands of the government because they were vulnerable. We take a moment of silence to remember that they actually were not vulnerable, but that they were powerful and that today is for them. So if you wouldn't mind, could you just please join me in a few seconds of silence to remember those? Thank you everyone for coming out today. Thank you for listening to stories and thank you for stay waiting.
Thanks, Luke, for the video. Okay, we're into our last two speakers. Linda's going to speak. I just want to say Linda has been there from the very start with the Enough is Enough campaign. Linda is a very fantastic person. She has children with disabilities herself, and she's a fantastic advocate on their behalf, and she's always reminding me to make sure I say the word disabilities, because too often they've been forgotten about, and we need to make sure they're part of every campaign, including health, including housing, including education, including access to services. So we're going to welcome Linda to speak.
That brings us a bit of a headache because I'm always reminded that we need to include people with disabilities in everything because it affects every single part of their lives. I'm the spokesperson for Enough is Enough, as Stern has said, and the other organiser here to the left and right of me. We're all parents of children with disabilities who we're tired of waiting on waiting lists. We're tired of seeing our children suffer every single day of the week. We're tired of being thrown from doctor to doctor to get referral after referral, only to go on a waiting list to get on a waiting list. We decided that this wasn't, we weren't going to tolerate this any longer. We wanted an end to it. We want our children to receive the services that they need. We want to see them receiving the assessments they need in order to get onto the list. Because sometimes if your child does not have an assessment, you cannot get onto a list for services. We're tired of seeing our children crying because they're in pain. We're tired of seeing our children be told they're bold because they have behavioural issues, but we don't have a behavioural therapist to look at them. We're tired of seeing our children not being able to get into the correct educational system. We're tired of seeing children with scoliosis lying in pain every single day and not be able to get the surgery they want. Children with EDS that's often not even recognised in this country, not being able to get the treatment that they need and having to go abroad at a cost to themselves because they can't even go to National Purchase Scheme and get it that way. We're tired and tired and tired of continually having to fight for the rights of children and adults with disabilities. Yesterday I attended a meeting with Family Carers Ireland in Kilkenny, and I left it quite scared. And the reason I left it scared was there was a lot of carers there, a lot older than me, who have been fighting since the time that their children were babies, and now their children are in their 50s and 60s. And I looked around the room and I said, I'm tired fighting now. What am I going to be like when I'm 60 or when I'm 70? Am I going to have to fight for my children every single day for the rest of my life? Am I not going to have a life? Am I going to just exist as a person who fights? Because you don't have a life outside of that. You don't have access to respite. We don't have access to home support. You're often told there's a waiting list, you can't get it. Our children need respite as much as we do. If I'm burnt out and I'm barely able to function and get up every day, that has a knock-on effect on my children. They need a break from me as much as sometimes I might need a break from them. Does that mean I don't love them because I need them to go to respite? It means I love them more because they need that respite. We have met with Simon Harris. We have met with Finny McGrath. We have yet to hear back any adequate response as to what they are going to do to make a better health service for our children and adults with disabilities. We are not going to go away, and what they have done is sometimes after we protest, we get hand-delivered letters for appointments. It's like, shut them up, let them go away. Well, I'm here to tell you, Simon Harris and Finny McGrath, we are going nowhere. I'm standing here on behalf of parents who could not come out today. I'm standing here on behalf of people with disabilities who are too sick to come out here today. And I will continue to come out every single week if I have to until this country stands up and gives us the services that we need. Thank you.
Alright folks, I'm the last speaker, and I just want to talk about the Still Waiting campaign. I always, when I get on the media, get attacked about numbers. Where's the people for the Still Waiting campaign? They're in the hospital. They're on trolleys. They're sick at home. They haven't got the services. They can't be here today because they're not well enough to be here. We need more able-bodied people to get behind the Still Waiting Health campaign so we can put pressure on the government to implement reform. They have promised us reform. I see Roisin down there, I see Richard down there, I see Sinn Féin representatives, I see Green Party representatives down there, and they have all signed up to this reform. The government has signed up to the reform. It's a €6 billion plan over 10 years to put it in healthcare, and our message is simple. We want it. Give it to us. If you want to reform the health service, we will take it. But you aren't going to do it, because you are allowing political ideology to get in the way. And we need to stop it. And we need people power movements to stop it. This campaign is different to other campaigns because what we're trying to do is, and the message is coming, we are on every local radio community just getting out our word to say we need to come together. We can't wait till the next community is under attack. We can't wait for them to come after our services in places like Donegal or Waterford or Laois or wherever we're from. We can't wait and let them take our mental health services and move them into voluntary or private sectors. We can't allow them to commodify something that is needed, that is a human right. And we will not let that happen. The Still Waiting campaign has a very, very simple message. We are stronger together. Just like a football team. When Donegal played Dublin in 2011, we went to the All-Ireland. And we played a defensive game of football. We defended. And we lost. Because we were defending our goals. We were defending our teams. But I say to you, when we came back in 2012 and we went on the offence, and we decided to score a few goals and score a few points, we won the All-Ireland, so we won't get on the offence. So delegates, I'm asking you to take out your cards. If anybody hasn't got a card, you can get them over here. Vanessa's here at the front, she's got a few cards left. We're going to take a vote. Vanessa, just Roisin there and Richard wants one as well. Has everybody got a card? Is there? Come on out, guys. Come on. All the speakers is there as well. Come on out as well. Get your card. Let's come on in nice and tight if you can, whoever's able. We want to get a big crowd shot of this. Media, this is your opportunity if you're still here. Who's okay? Our message is very simple. On Tuesday, if the government don't invest €1 billion into the health service and implement this launch of care, it's time for Simon Harris to go. So we're going to give Simon Harris the red card. All in favour? Keep it up. Now, delegates, on behalf of the Still Waiting campaign, thank you for coming out. Take that card as a momentum. We'll be back on the streets again. The nurses, I don't know if they're going to go striking, but if they're going to go striking, we need to get out and support them and call a national day of action in support of the nurses. Because they, like everybody else, are carrying the health service along with the frontline workers, and it's just not fair, and we can't allow it to help anymore. Thanks very much. We'll see you all again.